An update out of the New York hush money election interference case today. Judge Juan Merchan partially lifting that gag order placed upon Donald Trump. The disgraced, now criminally convicted ex-president is able to comment on the witnesses who testified against him in that case. Witnesses like his former attorney, Michael Cohen, and the woman Cohen paid the hush money to, Stormy Daniels. Judge Merchan did not lift the part of the order barring Trump from going after court staff, individual prosecutors, and family members of any counsel, staff member, the court, or the district attorney. That part stays in place until Trump's sentencing on July 11th. Michael Cohen's response to this, quote, "For the past 6 years, Donald and his acolytes have been making constant negative statements about me. Donald's failed strategy of discrediting me so that he can avoid accountability did not work then and won't work now." Joining us, former Trump fixer and attorney Michael Cohen, host of the Mea Culpa and Political Beatdown podcast. He is the author of the books Revenge, How Donald Trump Weaponized the U.S. Department of Justice Against His Critics, and Disloyal, a memoir, now classic, both of them. Michael Cohen, how are you doing? And how are you feeling about this gag order being lifted?
I'm hanging in there, Nicole. You know, like I said before, for 6 years, he and his acolytes have been doing this. Let's not forget the number of members of Congress and other acolyte friends of Trump's that showed up to the courthouse when I was testifying. And the first chance that they had to go to run out to do Donald's bidding, they're right there in front of the camera, including people like the #2 guy in our government, MAGA Mike Johnson, out there carrying Donald's water for him. So look, is it stressful? Sure. Do I feel bad for myself and other witnesses that Donald intends to go after? Who knows? Maybe he'll even do it at the upcoming debate. Yes, I feel bad for them. I feel bad for myself. But it's what could he say that he has not said already 1,000 times? I mean, that's what Donald does. He repeats himself over and over and over. So what's he going to say? Michael Cohen's a liar. Michael Cohen is a gloat. Michael Cohen didn't tell the truth. He's my lawyer. He did it all on his own. We all know the truth already. It's 6 years of me telling the same story, and Donald can't keep track of what story, he's saying next.
Michael, do you think it is, I mean, he doesn't read books, he didn't read his PDB, but he can read a poll. You were in the trenches with him when he was first becoming a politician. And I wonder if you think discrediting you and discrediting the case is all about what he sees in the polls, about his loss of support among independent voters.
Yeah, and it's 100%. He can't read a poll, and you're right, he doesn't read books. He didn't read the memos that were given to him when he was president of the United States. What he wants is bullet points. That's what polls really are. It just shows you whether you're up or you're down, you're plus or you're minus the 50-50. Is he going to impress any independent voter out there by attacking me or by attacking Stormy Daniels or by attacking a juror or a judge or anybody else at any point in time before the election? The answer is a resounding no. But is that going to change his mind? The answer is no to that too, because he's a petulant child and he doesn't think past the moment. He needs to do for himself to get off of his chest the anger, the angst that he has as a result of that poll. And so he's going to go ahead and he's going to make up stories like the fact that he's now going out and saying things like President Biden is sleeping so that he gets all his energy for the debate, and that they're going to give him an injection of like Adderall or something to really hype him up for the debate. It's because he knows that he's losing, and he's losing not because, of anything that Joe Biden is doing. He's losing because of the things that he's doing. And by the way, he should be out of the race already based upon the successes of Joe Biden. But that's not what's knocking Trump down in the polls. It's his own actions, his own stupidity that people are seeing now and saying to themselves, I can't have this guy for 4 years. He's dangerous to democracy. He's dangerous to just the world.
Hey there, MSNBC fans. I'm Luke Russert, and be sure to join me, Rachel Maddow, Jen Psaki, Lawrence O'Donnell, Steve Kornacki, Joy Reid, and many more. September 7th in Brooklyn. MSNBC Live Democracy 2024. Click on the link for ticket information. We will see you there.